and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Hello and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Shifts and Pucks podcast, Flames edition. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter or X if you prefer at Shifts and Pucks. I will remain to call it what it should always be called, Elon Twitter. You can also follow us on Facebook, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio as well. And so, we are here for our Thursday Flames chat. Lots to get into. Bit emotional, but we have to do our hellos. Hello, Sean. How are you?
I'm good, Kev. Yeah, it's been quite the couple days for Flames fans and the Flames team and everyone involved. So, yeah, it's going to be, good to be here, though.
And for the first time, and as I'm trying to do something here, multitasking not working.
Should I do my Al Borland salute while you do that?
What's that?
My Al Borland salute while you do that?
Yeah. How are you, Dan Stevenson?
I'm doing well. Happy New Year, gentlemen. It's good to be back. It's good to start another season, and it's been an emotional week, but I always enjoy talking Flames hockey with you boys.
Yeah, and let's get right into it. And it's very rare, to be honest with you, that I would cry for someone that I've never met. But let's start with the news around Chris Snow, and I'll just read what Kelsey Snow has written on Twitter for the last couple of days. This is what she posted yesterday. With a shattered heart, I've come to share that yesterday that Chris became unresponsive and went into cardiac arrest. For those who don't know, Chris Snow has been in a very lengthy battle with ALS. Paramedics and doctors were able to get his heart beating again, but devastatingly, a scan showed that Chris has suffered a catastrophic brain injury caused by a lack of oxygen. His doctors do not expect him to wake from this. My chest feels cracked open and hollowed out. Chris is the most beautiful, brilliant person I'll ever know, and doing life without him feels untenable. Hug your people. And then today she wrote, as she continues, I'm just going to scroll down her Twitter here as she continues to scroll here. Lots of memories about Chris, but she did write again today that.
Are you looking for this tweet?
Yes, I am.
Yesterday confirmed that Chris will not wake up. In life, Chris offered his body to a clinical trial to help others. In death, he will do the same. He remains on life support while organ donation is arranged. We're so proud of him.
Yeah, it's tough to hear, and you know, and I think one of the things that's, and you know, we're a Flames podcast, we're a Canucks podcast. There are times that we chirp each other for rivalry reasons, but I think with stuff like this, and Sean always talks about this too. Like we talk about, there's been a lot of talk about the hockey culture, but hockey community and people like Chris Snow and the impact that he's had, not only on the Calgary Flames, but the hockey community and this battle that he has went through, the entire family has went through. They have faced a very devastating situation with a ton of courage. And my heart goes out to Kelsey. My heart goes out to the kids. And my heart right now just goes out to the Flames family. And I'll always remember that press conference, the trade deadline press conference with Brad Treliving, and when he was asked about Snowy, how he emotionally broke down, And even when Craig Conroy started about Mikael Backlund, you can just feel the heaviness in the air. And this is a hard one. And it's not only for the Flames. I think it is the hockey community that has been impacted as well.
Yeah, I agree, Kev. I think, 2019 is when Chris Snow was diagnosed. I think he was 42 at the time. And, I think in hockey, we think there's always been this thing in sports of, if you're sick, if you're hurt, if something's wrong, hide it, right? Store it away. Don't let anyone see it. And I really think Chris was brave for coming out, and his whole family, and bringing ALS to the front and showing that you can do this and he can do it and he can fight through it. And I know people that have had diseases, ALS and other things, and they've said that they've drawn a lot of strength from Chris and Kelsey and the kids, and they like that he was open with that. So I really appreciate Chris not kind of taking that fight and going away and fighting on his own, but to bring everybody into that. And I think, as you said, people have never met Chris, but they feel connected to him. And I think, it's great that we've all been able to watch him persevere. And it's, I think we all knew that at some point Chris wouldn't persevere through it. And I'm glad we've had him as long as we have.
Yeah, you said it right there, Dan. Despite not knowing him, despite not knowing Kelsey, you feel like you do because of how strong they've been, how open they've been with this fight. And yeah, it's just this is a gut punch. Even like I said, even though we knew it was coming, it still was an absolute gut punch. And his impact will live on. His legacy will live on. And he just, the amount of, I remember I saw a tweet from Ivanka Osmek from Sportsnet talking about how she had never met Kelsey. And when one of her family members got diagnosed with ALS, she reached out, and the amount of support that Kelsey and the Snow family gave her and her family was immense. So yeah, it's hard. I put out, it's hard to, sometimes it's so hard to put into words what you really want to say. And I think everyone on here knows I'm not lacking for words most of the time. This time I am. I really do not know what to say, because I don't think there are enough words to put together in the right way to really give justice to the impact that Chris Snow, Kelsey Snow, and the family has had on not only ALS research, but the hockey community and the sports community as a whole.
And, if I can just add to that, I think that this is going to be a test. And we've heard over the years from various alumni, from people in the league, the Flames are a great organization and they take care of their own. And I think that Chris is so fortunate to have been part of the Flames organization. We all know Kelsey and the kids are going to get taken care of, right? Even with Chris not here, they will make sure that family gets taken care of. They will make sure that Kelsey is part of the team as long as she wants to be, that she is supported by the team as long as she needs to be. And sometimes I think we forget that, yes, these are companies, but the Flames have always been one of the better teams in the league for that. And I think, we're so fortunate that Chris has that support of a great organization behind him, because I'm not worried about what's going to happen to the Snow family now.
And there is a GoFundMe campaign out there that has been endorsed by Kelsey. So if you are wanting to help out, go support that.
And, I think another way to help out, as Kelsey said, hug your people. That's how she ended one of her tweets. And just remember that time is precious, and, spend that time with those people that are in your life, because you never know when they'll be gone. Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah. That's a good way to wrap it up. I just wanted to, the GoFundMe is out there. And kudos brought to, just my only other thing to add is kudos to Brad Treliving as well. To, it's not the best busy time of the year, bitter feelings with an old organization, but he's taken the time to be with the Snow family. I think that shows a lot of class and respect. And you're right. I agree. Hug your people is a good way to end that. And
You know what I mean? Talking about Tree there, there was talk that, before he left, he made sure that Snow was taken care of. He made sure that there was an extension there for whoever came in. So, Brad has a special place in his heart for Chris Snow.
Yeah. And I would think, Craig Conroy would too. And I would think most of that organization, knowing that the people that have been there, like Don Maloney's and all of the people, Brad Pascal. You saw Cassie. I saw Cassie tweet as well, retweet the GoFundMe as well. So that organization has been as fully impacted as well. Yeah. So this is sort of we build this with some emotion.
It's kind of bittersweet this week.
It's very bittersweet in a lot of different ways, and.
Well, that day alone was just so much Flames news.
Yeah.
Even on that day, someone tweeted us and said, the old line from that song, from every new beginning comes some other beginning's end. And while, the Chris Snow saga might be coming to an end, the Flames now have their 21st captain and they're moving in a different direction. So, yeah, just that one day, it was amazing how much news came on both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Let's go there. We got the news. It was kind of starting to percolate throughout training camp. There was a lot of debate during the offseason about who would be the next captain. We knew there would be a next captain. And Elliot Friedman tweeted on Monday night that the prediction he had for an extension was 3 years and 5.5. But Mikael Backlund signed an extension of 2 years and 4.5 AAV with a nice New Jersey with a very large C on the news, not the Flaming C, but that captain C is a little bit bigger now as well.
C so nice, he's got to wear it twice.
Yes. And so Mikael Backlund, the 21st captain in Calgary Flames history. Let's start with the deal. And maybe this, are you surprised? I'm kind of surprised this ended up this way. And I guess one of the lessons here is when you read the tweets and the reports, I think you have to take a lot of things with a grain of salt.
I think, Kevin, especially in the offseason, right? We have to remember that for full-time reporters, unlike us, they need something to talk about. And I think especially in the offseason, they tend to make a mountain out of a molehill because it gives them 2, 3, 4 hours of content.
But we were dealing with a mountain in this offseason. We're dealing with a cantankerous locker room, a very angry locker room that demanded some change, and a lot of the three big names. We'll get into the other two here: Backlund, Lindholm, and Hanifin. We weren't convinced we're coming back.
But wouldn't you have been angry after last season? I think
yes.
they all had the right to be angry, and I think Absolutely. That there's that old saying, distance makes the heart grow fonder. And I think that's maybe what these guys need to do is they need to take some time away and reflect on this and realize that, maybe the world isn't over and we can come back and we can do it again differently with different hockey ops people.
I think that's also, it's also taking a step back, realizing that, like, even if they put out the saying that they weren't going to come back, Conroy took a patient approach, didn't make any trades other trades other than the Toffoli one, and is trying to make sure that they stay. So he's gotten one with Backlund here. 2 years at 4.5, I think, is a very good deal. It's better than the 3 years at 5.5 that Frieden was reporting there. I still think going short term on a captain in a Canadian market isn't necessarily the best approach, but Backlund's put his time in.
And I think what you'll see there, Sean, is I think you'll have him as the captain and you will name an heir apparent like Rasmus and say, Rasmus, you got 3 years to soak it all up, then it's yours.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's what we're going to see is we're going to see a transition from the old guard to the Rasmus Anderson-led new guard, because I don't think there's anyone else that is fits it going long-term better than Rasmus Anderson that's on the Flames right now.
And, speaking of the old guard, I'm kind of not surprised Backlund's the first one done. I mean, he's been with this organization for 15 years. He was drafted, in 2007. He was 19. When Conroy became GM, who has more history with Conroy of this group than Backlund? I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of discussion over the summer, a lot of frank discussion, and even having spoken many times in the past before Conroy was a full GM, I wouldn't be surprised, if those two had a little more history together where they could maybe make something work or come to a meeting of the minds. And when I saw Connor as GM, I thought Backlund's going to get done. I mean, hey, if he can get Kipper to come back, he can get Backlund to come back.
I also think Backlund was probably the easiest. Was the easiest to get done of those three. As you said, he's got the long term, drafted by this organization. He's been developed by this organization. This is his home. You don't necessarily have that with the Lindholm and Hanifin. So I think it was an easier to sell Backlund on, this is your home, you should stay here, as opposed to the other two, which who I think are more. It's going to be tougher to sell them on that, because I think they're going to be looking else. They want to see team success over stability at home.
And, I think it's interesting. The Backlund deal does not carry any sort of no movement clause, as far as I can tell. This contract does, but I don't think the new one does. So I wonder if that's a sort of a sign that, hey, guys, if this doesn't work, then we still have the right to part ways so I can chase a cup.
Yeah. And it's cap friendly enough. If you do have to make that move, it's not an unreasonable contract for somebody.
Oh, sorry. It's there's a full no movement clause in 2024, 2025, and a modified no move in 2025, 2026. So 15 team no trade.
Yeah, I figured he would have at least that to just be able to say, even though the Flames would end up just basically trading him to who he wants anyways.
Yeah.
But still, just having that control just makes it a little easier for him.
Yeah.
And you were asking, what do we think of the deal? I'm 4.5, I think, sounds like a lot now. We've talked about this last season when I was on the show. Remember that the cap is expected to jump almost $10 million in the next 2 years. So I think a $4.5 million jump really isn't going to be that much by the time we get into next season. This is also a guy who, shockingly, is 34 and hasn't regressed yet. Like, how many guys do we see at 34 that really haven't started their regression? So we know it's coming. I think in that last year of the deal, it might be an albatross of a deal, but it'll only be 1 year. How often have we seen guys who are 35, 36 regressing? We go, crap, they got 4 or 5 years left on this. I think that if they're willing to use Backlund as the trainer and the teacher and put him out there with some younger players, I think it'll be a great value. But I think 4.5 is the highest I would have gone. 2 years, the highest I would have gone. I like the deal.
I don't think it'll be an albatross at 4.5 in 3 years. Because remember, this deal doesn't kick in until until next year. So we're talking 24, 25, right?
And if they can win before then, it all gets washed away, right? If you can win and he's part of that, nobody cares anymore.
Yeah, to me, I would have even been okay with 3 at 5.5, because I think part of this has been one of my pushbacks to the Lindholm conversation a little bit. It's not only, and this is something I'm trying to emphasize a little bit more in my commentary, is it's not just about the money, it's the person too. And I think that in some ways, if you go 3 and 5.5, it's a bit expensive, but you're also paying Backlund for what he's done to the community as well. So I wouldn't have had a huge problem with 3 at 5.5. I really like this deal. I think it's win-win for both. I think it's win for the Flames, allows you to explore other options, play around a little bit. And I think it is a win for Backlund at 2 years, and it allows this team to build this leadership guard to continue to go that way. There was a stat here.
Kev, on that idea of paying him for what he does in the community, I think, as we talked about earlier, how good the Flames organization is, I think Backlund will have a job in this organization as long as he wants it. And I think if he takes the deal now, when he's 37, 38 and he retires, he can be coaching, he can be in player dev, he can be special assistant to the GM, he can do whatever. And I think there's a way to make up some of that cash in other ways later on.
Yeah.
I also think that you're setting a precedent. I mean, let's be honest. He's the third centerman right now. I don't think you can be paying a third centerman who's 35, 5.5 when you're trying to make some negotiations. And then you're looking at a guy like Pelletier, who when it's time for him to get paid says, well, this guy's making that. You've kind of got to set up your tiers of contracts. And I don't think Tree always did that as well as he should have. So I like that you're saying, you know what, he's 35, he's making 4.5. We're setting sort of a ceiling on that.
And as much as trying to pay it's not just about the on ice product. That's the main deal.
Yeah,
that's why they're brought in. It doesn't.
Right.
If they're good in the community, that's a bonus. If they're good off the ice, that's a bonus. But it's on the ice production and results that is what
That's why Evander Kane's got a job still.
90% of that is of what you're evaluating for these contracts is on ice, and that's even lowballing it.
I agree, and I think too that by Backlund taking a discount, I think he's showing his faith in the Flames. I mean, if I was 34
is it a
and
discount though?
Well, let's just say he's not. I mean, I think he could have re-upped if he was a free agent for more. If he were to go to free agency, I think you probably could have got 4.75 somewhere in there from a team that maybe isn't a playoff contender. But I think he's saying, I want to be here for 2 more years. I mean, we got to admit that's probably going to be his last deal. And to lock it up with the Flames, I think he's saying, I still see some potential in this team. Because I would have had no problem, just like I didn't when Iggy left. As much as it hurt, I love the player and I want him to chase that cup. And I kind of expected that was going to happen with Backlund. So the fact he locked up here, I think him saying, I believe in this roster.
Yeah. This is a stat from Ryan Pike about Mikael Backlund. I thought that this was interesting. Since 2016-17, the season he turned 28, Backlund's lines have outshot, outchanced, and high-dangered their opponents at 5 versus 5 every single season.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been I mean, I don't know what the regression will be. I think it's going to be interesting to see, and I guess how we deploy these lines. But I've said this before, and I'll say this again. As much as everybody loves Matthew Tkachuk, and he's considered one of the great players in hockey, I don't think he's the player he is without playing with Mikael Backlund. I think that's the type of impact that Mikael Backlund would have had on players. I think he's a solid. He's the type of player I like. All around, good player. Is he spectacular? No.
But he doesn't have to be as a third center either.
No,
but there's been times he's played as the number 1 center, and
no, he hasn't, Kev. I'm just going to stop you right now. He hasn't played as the first line center for games where he's outplayed the other 2 centers, and he's gotten more ice time. That's okay, but in terms of how they line up and how they design the lineup. He's a third
line. He's considered a third line center, but there's been times he has played more than everybody else, and it's been sometimes in a matchup situation. Sure. It's been sometimes in a situation where he's been the best center on the ice. He's always put the effort in. Right, in general, he's consistently put in an effort in. Not every night. He hasn't been perfect. I'm not saying that, but it's enough certainly to give him this longevity. And especially, Sean, as you a big 5-on-5 guy, I think you have to appreciate that stat that Ryan Pike has pointed out, right? So all I'm saying is Backlund, he's not spectacular, he's not flashy. I'm not putting him in an elite number 1
He
center.
has a job and he does his job well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it took him a while to find that job. I mean, being a first-round pick, I think everyone expected him to be the offensive dynamo. And it took him. I remember there were years when he first came in, fans said, he's not doing that. Let's move on from him. And I think he's a guy who can take a job. He can embrace that job. He does his job well. I think he can make Coronado look better. I think he can make, Coleman and Mangiapane, if that's where he continues to play, look better. I think he's one of those guys that every team would kill to have on their roster because he just makes anyone he plays with better.
Yeah. And just one more thing on Backlund before we move on to the assistants. And I know that Sean, it Canucks, there would be tons of Canucks Twitter that would disagree with me. But if Backlund went to free agency, if I were the Canucks, I would have snapped him up. I would have gobbled him up like Pac-Man. He would have been a perfect third line center on that team. Just a great fit, but a lot of there would have been.
I think if he was a free agent, 31 teams would want to snap him up.
Yeah.
I mean, it all depends on what the contract looks like, because that's the reality we live in. But if you're signing him to a 1 or 2 year deal, yeah, of course. And
The
I don't.
problem
And
is,
Kev, I'll also push back on you. I don't think there'd be there if it was a 1 or 2 year deal. I don't think there'd be many fans on any team that would be upset about that.
I think some would be pushed back on the age.
Can I ask you guys
For
two
1 or
questions?
2 on it again, it's on a 1 or 2 year deal. No, I don't think there would be a significant amount of fans on any team that would have a massive issue with that.
I think they'd push back if he was brought in to be the number one center. If you're bringing him in to play the same role, even at that age, I mean, nobody cares that Giordano's playing another year. Like, I think when you put them in the right role, it works.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Dan.
2 questions for you guys. One, do you think that he now retires a Flame?
I think it depends on how things go.
Do you think that number 11 will be raised to the rafters?
No.
Okay.
Again, he's basically been a third, like sort of second or third line center his whole career.
Do you think he could be forever a Flame and not retired?
That's one thing the Flames need to fix.
I get angry about that, but I'll be honest. No one's been put in there since Ken King, and it was a Ken King idea. So I think let's just leave it sitting where it is.
I think that if you do that right, though, like because there's the upper echelon of the top end players that you need to retire. You should be retiring numbers, and honestly, I'm going to get into this on Monday when we talk Canucks, because of the Luongo announcement and going into the Ring of Honor and everything.
We need a Ring of Fire.
I don't mind calling it that, honestly. But like the idea of having some sort of like secondary tier where you could have players that have been sort of heart and soul, like not quite jersey retired, but the heart and soul, and that would be where I would put Backlund.
I agree.
Sure.
Great decoration for the new building.
Yeah, I agree. So we have generally, I think we all agree Rasmus Andersson will wear one of the A's. But I'm very curious as to where we're at. The one other name that kept coming up in the offseason about potentially wearing C, and I was not on the page with this one, I was on Team Rasmus, was Mackenzie Weegar. Do we suspect that he's going to wear an A, or do we have someone else in mind?
I think as a guy who's still relatively new to this team, I don't know. I wouldn't have put the C on him for sure. I don't also probably want my C on both defensemen. I think that, we have one guy who's shown that he wants to be on this team and has shown his development in Raz. I think you got to put the other one on a forward.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's a rotating
2 at home, 2 on the road, or
I think 3 or 4 of them, and I think Weegar will be one. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Huberdeau and Kadri wear it as well.
I could actually see, if you want to do that, Sean, that Raz is always the A because they're trying to groom him for captain. Then you rotate the second one home or road.
Yeah, and I think you could have like one of Huberdeau or Kadri along with Weegar as the 3 that you rotate through.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know a lot of people still have mixed thoughts on Kadri. He's an NHL vet. He's got a cup. Like, I think, you definitely want to consider him. And I think Huberdeau is another great choice.
I think
the thing with Kadri is he's got a little more spice to him, and sometimes you need that in your
for sure.
leadership group. Coming from a Canucks standpoint, having JT Miller as an assistant alternate has been good. Going back to the golden years for the Canucks with when you had Henrik as captain, they had Ryan Kessler as the alternate, and that was fantastic. A nice dichotomy there. So adding some spice in there with Kadri, and I think Weegar can bring that as well.
And we have to remember, you don't need a letter to be a leader, right? And even Daryl said that. I mean, Weegar could still be one of those guys leading behind the scenes. I think Coleman does a lot more leadership than we see. But yeah, I think for your front-facing leaders, it's probably Huberdeau, Kadri, and Rasmus Andersson.
I with Kadri, the one thing that I would say is I think that he needs he seems like he needs something to keep his attention up. I think that he's a guy that if he's engaged, right in there, but if he's not engaged, he kind of seems to lose his purpose at times. That's kind of the thing I've noticed throughout Kadri's career, whether that be Toronto, whether that be Colorado, or that be Calgary. So I think, I think that's an interesting, putting an A on him would be interesting. Down the road, I have a name, and I'm just going to toss it out there.
Sure.
What about Dylan Dubé? He's led the team in fitness for 3 years in a row. You're going to get into some contract extensions with him shortly. Is he a guy you could put an A on down the road?
I mean, for me, I think we need to find out what's going on with the Hockey Canada investigation before you even remotely think about that.
That's fair.
As well as, is he going to be part of this team long term?
That's where I'm still at too. Like, to me, I mean, I like Dubé as a guy. I think he's a good piece, but I think he's also a piece that has never fully reached his potential. And I've said for a number of years, the Flames need a piece to move. I think Dylan is a guy that is in some ways interchangeable, in some ways expendable. And I agree with Sean. I don't know he's going to be here long term. And I'm not sure, knowing what I know about Dylan, I'm not sure he's the leader behind the scenes that you want to wear one of your letters.
Fair enough. All right, so that's the Backlund Anderson part. I guess the Lindholm Hanifin situation. We'll get in. This is sort of where I'm at with Lindholm. I think ideally the Flames would like to get this resolved before the regular season. I think with the Hanifin situation, I think that's a little bit different, and I think that's something I think they're going to unfortunately have to kick the can down the road because of other issues. Not only Oliver Shillington, but Dennis Gilbert's injury, although not long term, and he should be back soon. There could be some injuries and depth issues at that blue line that you may have to wait with Noah Hanifin, but I wonder if we get, before the regular season, we see a decision on Lindholm one way or the other.
I don't know if you'll see it one way or the other. I think you either see, well, I guess you'll see it one way or the other, but I don't think he's going to come out and say he's not going to sign. I think he's either signed, or I think they're not going to move him. They're going to either have him signed or they're willing to go into the season with him at 1 year.
Yeah, I think with both, I don't think we're going to see a resolution until at the earliest, maybe American Thanksgiving, when the Flames have a better idea on where they are sitting, if they're in a battle, if they've fallen out and they're not looking like they're going to be contending for a playoff spot this year, then the decision becomes easier for both those players and the team. So I think I don't expect a resolution on either of those players before then.
I could see Lindholm getting locked up. I could see the Flames really pushing to get that done, if not before the season, before the new year. And I think that I can see that coming out. I think for me, I'm not sure about Hanifin. And I think if I had to pick one of those two to walk, I think it's going to be Hanifin.
Yeah, me too. I think I was the one that I thought Hanifin would be the one that I don't think is coming back.
Whether he walks or whether I hope none of them walk. Like, I think the Flames got burned twice, and Johnny, I shouldn't say Matthew because they got value for Matthew, but I think they got, burned by kind of losing two guys in 1 year. And I'm hoping that if these guys don't want to be there, they use them as long as they can, but they move, they get some value from them. My issue is if you move on from Lindholm, I don't think there's another guy to fill that spot. I think that if Hanifin gets moved, say at the deadline, you could probably limp along and fill that spot, depending on what happens with Shillington.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to going back to the whole Dylan Dubé, is he going to be here long term? I think I was expecting a lot more roster movement from Craig Conroy this offseason, but I still expect it to be happening in the next year or so. If he's going to be patient, I still expect to see some roster turnover here, because this team has underperformed most of the time with the same core.
And that might be
And
an easy way, Sean, to sort of make Dubé your scapegoat and say, we need to change guys. He's an easy guy to change.
Well, then, like even with this, he's not. I wouldn't even put Dubé as part of this core. I know you've lost Monahan, Gaudreau, and Tkachuk, but there's still a big chunk of that core that underachieved last year. Was part of the team that part of a lot of those teams leading up into there. And if you're still middling, at some point you have to shit or get off the pot and find a way to do something to change this team. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing the same thing over and over again.
And that might be a good excuse not to bring Lindholm back until because you've got 10.5 tied up in Huberdeau long term. You got 7 million tied up in Gaudry long term. Do you want another, let's call it 7 or 8 tied up in Lindholm long term? If you're realizing you've got to, they don't want to use the rebuild word. So let's call it if you want to, put a youthful face on the organization, you probably don't want that tied up, and you'd probably rather move that for assets.
And it's 7 or 8. It's not going to be that low for Lindholm either. You're looking at what you're looking at what Bo Horvat got as the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this has been so intriguing since they brought in Huberdeau and signed him. They brought in Weegar and signed them, and they've locked into these players when this team has underachieved or just had underachieved for so long. They've had 2 really good seasons, and then for lack of a better term, flamed out in the playoffs.
It's true. Yep.
They haven't done it. They haven't.
And if I'm Lindholm,
and they haven't been able to put it together.
And if I'm Lindholm, I don't want to stay to watch that happen again. I want to get out of here. So
I think that's the same thing with Hanifin.
Yeah.
And at some point, you have to shit and get off the pot and figure out what the fuck you want to do with the direction of this team.
Yep. And I can totally see, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a deal in principle and they're saying, you know what, I'll sign it when I know what we are. I wouldn't be surprised if there's been money.
Are you signing up for another just up and down inconsistent team?
Well, that's it. Yeah. And you don't want to be on that team long term. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's been a term and a dollar arranged with Lindholm. And he says, once I know what we are, I'll decide if I want to put my name on it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, to me, this conversation, I feel like Lindholm in some ways has been painted the villain here. And I'm on his side on a number of different levels. For one, the way the organization and the team has been for the last few years, but also he's been a value contract for a number of years as well. He's been he's a steal. You want to look at cap geeks and analytic geeks. You want to look at his cap hit right now. Look at it now. It's a steal of a deal. So he has, you can argue the age gap or whatever. If Bo Horvat got 8 years and JT Miller got 8 years, it's tough to argue in a Lindholm camp that he should not.
I agree. And I also don't know if the Flames can afford that deal. I mean, if they want to be competitive, if you've got 7 million tied up in Gaudry at center already, you're going to have to get rid of some money then. So let's assume that you give your Hanifin money to him. Now you're still short a defenseman. At some point, somebody's got to go. The contract structure on this team does not make sense to renew everybody. Because of the value contract, I just think now's the time to sell. If you're going to sell them now, because teams would pay a lot to take on a good contract like that for such a great player.
That's the big thing, is that the whole contract structure here just doesn't make sense.
No.
I'm not necessarily blaming True Living for that, but I do think that I think it's a whole ownership, management, whole bigger complex discussion. But you're looking at had they been able to save more of a futures package for Matthew Tkachuk, even if you still got a couple NHLers, but they were younger. Like, you could sell that. You could sell that there's you're gonna have more growth coming up in this team on this team. But with Huberdeau, who's 30, locked up for 8 years, you've got Kadri, who's 32, locked up for 6 years. Like, and Uyghur, he's 29, locked up for 8 years. Like, at some, like, when are you, what's the plan here?
Sean, I think a lot of these deals, like what, as Kevin said, Lindholm was a steal when they signed him. And I think the idea was they would have won before that came up, and then you wouldn't renew a bunch of them. Okay, we had a great deal. We won the cup. Now these guys can go on to greener pastures, very similar to what we've seen from a lot of winners where they win, they can't afford to renew, and they have a big turnaround. But I think that because it didn't happen, now we've got to really look at, okay, now what? And somebody's got to go.
Well, I think that they got on this, like, to me, as much as Johnny and Matthew were important, I think that what was not taken into the conversation, though, was what you were going to pay Lindholm. And I asked that in that year, and people are like, we can kick that down the can. And I'm like, well, you actually need to start kind of thinking about this a little bit.
I think it's been considered, Kev, but I think that, there's every year as a GM, you got to look at what's right in front of you. And I think that maybe it hasn't been talked about as much because, crap, I lost two of my, top three center or my top three players. I have to renew that now. So I bet it's been in the back of Brad's mind. And I'm sure that there was some discussions there, but especially after last year when he's unhappy. I mean, the year before, when has Lindholm been on a successful Flames team? Like, if you're Lindholm at the end of every year, if they say, let's talk, I'm going to say next year.
And they can only he was only eligible for an extension July 1st this year.
Officially an extension, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some discussions before that of what would it take.
That's discussions and all that, but there's only so much you can do, and then you can have those discussions, and then last year happens
for sure,
and that gets blown up.
And if I were Lindholm, I'd say, show me we're different.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been through how many coaches since he's been here, right? I mean, great. So you brought another coach. Great. It's like every other year you bring in another coach. Like, show me this one's different.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Let's move on and talk about Jakob Pelletier. Significant injury. He's going to miss some time indefinitely. Sounds like a pretty significant time. They didn't use that word with Dennis Gilbert, so I'm going to assume it's a fairly lengthy time without Jakob Pelletier. I'm assuming we're not going to see him back until the regular season at some point. First of all,
he's gotten surgery, and that usually means months.
The word that's already been thrown out is indefinite. And we know that when we hear that word indefinite, it means you may not play again that season.
Yeah, it's scary. What did we think of the hit?
First off, I could not find a freaking clip of that for the life of me for a while there. But when I finally saw it, I think it's just unfortunate.
I agree.
When I looked at it, it was they were both chasing down for the puck. Pelletier got there first. He tried to make some sort of a deke move to try and shake the Seattle player, and got pushed down and went shoulder first into the boards. I don't think it was malicious. I don't think it was dirty. I think it was just unfortunate.
Yeah, I would tend to say the same.
Yeah, I understood why the Flames players were upset at the time. It did look a little lengthy when I first looked at it, but I didn't think it was malicious.
No, I think it was one of those things, we see it in pro wrestling all the time too, right? You fall wrong or you just take a bump wrong. And I think it was just him taking the bump wrong. He, wasn't ready for it. He wasn't where he needed to be. And it happens. It's a full contact sport.
Yeah. Which, well, with this full contact sport, they need to fill this lineup position. I think Pelletier, in my mind, was pretty much a lock on this team, but I think now it creates another open hole of either bringing someone in, or is there someone in this lineup now that can take over that Pelletier position.
And Kev, I think it's a great way to look at it. And that's the way I've been looking at it too. Is yes, it's unfortunate Pelletier is out, but I think it gives opportunity to somebody else. As far as bringing somebody in, I mean, Conroy very clearly said he wants to fill this lineup any holes with youth first. If this was last year, if this is true living, my first thought would be probably calls Phil Kessel to fill the spot because he liked to go with those kind of veteran UFA guys. This year, though, I think it's going to be who's the next man up. Is it Adam Klapka? Is it Connor Zary? Like, I think, you probably just say to the guys, we got a job open. Prove to us it should be you. And I think it will be filled internally.
Well, I think the first man up will be Coronado because I think
Coronado's already penciled in though.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I think he just takes that half step up to where Pelletier would have been in that lineup. And then you've got Klapka, you've got Zary, even expecting more from a player like Walker Dewar. I think is going to be there. But
I mean, even some of the older guys, I mean, you got Ben Jones, you got Clark Bishop, you got Dryden Hunt, guys who are in their, higher 20s. I think those are the kind of guys you're looking at to fill that spot. And I could even see, I mean, really, I think that right now, when you look at it, Coronado is probably penciled into the top 6, probably Pelletier in the bottom 6, just looking at the roster. I could even see that position rotating between a couple guys until they find the right one.
You really have Coronado you think he penciled in? Like, what do you like?
I would imagine that the second line for the Flames come opening day will be Dubé, Kadri, Coronado. Or Mangiapane, Kadri, Coronado.
Okay.
Like, who else are you putting up there, Kev?
I think, honestly, Kev, your third line was going to be Pelletier, Ruzicka, and Dewar to start with.
I would have thought the
fourth line?
Fourth line, sorry, yeah.
Funny.
Yeah, I would make that your fourth line, I think. I've had you put Pelletier with Backlund and Coleman.
I was going to throw the thought of putting Walker Dewar, Backlund, and Coleman and moving Mangiapane with Kadri.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways to set it up, but I don't see how you have both Coronado and Pelletier in the top 4, in the top 6. And I think that right now they need a right winger more than they need a left winger in that top 6. And I think that's why Coronado gets put up there.
Just let me ask you a question. Do you not think that there's some value in having Coronado at least start the season with the Wranglers?
I do. And if I was the GM, I probably would, but I don't think that's what the Flames are going to do.
Yeah, because that's my thought. I'm watching, I think that there's a ton of potential with him. Please don't get me wrong. But this is a guy, I'm looking at the Wranglers roster, and I don't see a lot of skill there. And I think that this is a guy that could at least use a half a season of.
I'm a firm believer that there's very few players that should make the jump from, especially college or the dub or, any Canadian league right to the NHL. I still think and you guys have heard me say it before, I still think it's a big reason Sam Bennett maybe didn't turn out the way people expect him to. So if it was me, I'd put Coronado down there, but I think they'll at least give him a look. And I think the fans want to see him there. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on the Wranglers at some point, but I think he'll start with the Flames.
Okay, fair enough. Because he's
waiver exempt, right? So you can bring him up and down as much as you want to.
Yeah, for sure. Because the way that I had the lines in my mind was Lindholm, Huberdeau, Sharangovich. And then you had Kadri with Dubé, Mangiapane, Backlund, Coleman, and Dewar. And then Ruzicka with not Pelletier, but
and going back to what we were saying earlier, that this team's icing the same roster and it didn't work last time. I think we've tried the Dubé, Kadri, Mangiapane, it didn't work. So I think you need to start breaking those guys up.
How much did Mangiapane play with Kadri last year?
We've seen Dubé, Mangiapane with various centers. They've had Backlund, they've had other guys. I think you've got to start breaking some of those guys up.
But here's my reasoning though with. I think that Walker Dewar, I don't think he's a top 6 guy yet. He's not, but he's a guy that I think can work really well with Backlund. I'd like to see how that Backlund, Coleman, Dewar line works.
And, Dewar looked good for what? A handful of games, a dozen games maybe? I still don't know that he's an NHL guy. I think you've got to start him on the fourth line and make him earn his way up. I'm not saying he can't be, but I'm still not convinced that as a walk-on guy, he's going to be anything more. I think he's got to earn his way up.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's someone. He's someone that he has to start on the fourth line and earn his way. And as much as maybe he does fit that. At some point, you like as Dan says, you have to start reinventing the wheel here. You've got a team that's been up and down, underachieved most of the time, and you're just going to continue to plug away with the same, which is why I keep thinking that we're going to see some major roster reconstruction within the next year from Craig Conroy.
Yeah, and that's the reason I think that if they're going to put Coronado in the lineup, you put him with Kadri, because I think they want to sort of put him out there with vets and see what he could do.
Yeah.
At least to see what he's got. He might not stay here, but kid will give you 10 games, show us what you got.
Yeah. I don't know, because I mean, I guess then you go with Backlund, Coleman, Mangiapane, which has been an effective line, and then you've got Ruzicka, Dewar.
And I think that Mangiapane underperformed last year. Like, I think
yes,
right now,
he did not get enough criticism for his performance.
No, and I think based on what we saw last year, Dubé has to be higher in the lineup than Mangiapane to start with. I think, again, Mange needs to work his way back up. And I have no problem putting him on, let's call it line 3 of Mangiapane, Backlund, Coleman. And I would tell Mangiapane, take Dubé's job. Take that spot on line 2.
Fair. Yeah, make it a competition. I guess, like, what is your fourth line right now, though? I mean, it's. I guess you got Walker Dewar there.
I think you've got Dewar, you've got Ruzicka, and you've got whoever else they bring in. And I think even if we look at the farm team, I think Ben Jones could fit that role. I think you could look at some of the younger guys or some of the older young guys like Emilio Pettersson and guys like that. I think Adam Klapka would be a great start there. I think a Ruzicka, Klapka, Dewar line would be a really nice one.
Yeah, I'm a big Adam Klapka guy. I'm a big fan. I don't know if he's quite there. Like, I see him as
but I think he's closer to be there than anyone else they would put in there.
That's fair.
The fans are calling for Zari. Zari lost a year of development. I want to put him back on the farm to make that up. I mean, Pospisil maybe, Pettersson maybe, but again, those guys are kind of tweeners. Maybe give them a couple games of a look to see what they got. Your only other option, I think, is Kevin Rooney.
How has his camp been?
I think, honestly, he's not going to make it because he's making over $1 million. I think this team's going to go with the cheapest option they can find right now. I think Rooney's been there. He's been what we expect from an AHL centerman.
Yeah.
The thing with Rooney though is his contract? Yeah, that doesn't. He'll still have to. They'll have to bury it. So regardless,
but when they bury it, it's only 150 against the cap.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, if you're up against the cap, I'd rather have 150 against the cap than $1.25 million.
1.3, yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, I could even see them swapping that guy out. Again, try Zari, try Klapka, let guys. I still think that, honestly, the guy who might take it, and this surprised some people, is Dryden Hunt.
I'm wondering, a lot of people have been talking about that this is a guy that might take that least on the left side.
And the fourth line doesn't need to be the best guy from the AHL. And I've always been one of these guys that said, don't bring up your AHL star to play on the fourth line. You should bring a guy up to where you project them in the NHL for a lot of time. So who do you project to be your fourth line guy? Is it Hunt? Is it, Pospisil? And bring that guy up to try it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at with Coronado. Is I think that he could use that. I think he would fit well in a first line role at the AHL.
I'd send him to the Wranglers and let him tear up the league.
Yeah, that's what I would do with Coronado as well. I think he needs to tear up the league, to tear up the AHL. I've seen some, just from why I'm watching. I'm no expert, but I think there's some things that I think he could be working on to get himself in the position to use that shot much better.
And Kev, I think after getting a hat trick in the 10-0 game, I think that argument gets harder to make with Flames fans.
Well, I'll bring up a name of someone from the past that everyone was really high on, that was a first-round pick in a very similar situation. Chuck Kobasu. Chuck Kobasu was a guy that had an incredible camp. Everybody was on him. And once the regular season started, he started to fade away. Sir Matt Coronado got a hat trick, but with all due respect to that Canucks team, it wasn't the best team that they've ever iced exactly on there. So, I would pump my brakes on Matt Coronado a little bit. I know that people are excited about him. He's a first-round pick. I know that people want these young guys in, but you have to it's so important to make sure with development that you allow that confidence and they learn the nuances of the game. And I may be in the minority, but my belief is Matt Coronado needs to start in the AHL.
And I don't think the Flames are going to look externally for this. Like, I think that Conroy's committed to finding the solution for Pelletier's or for any roster spot internally if he can.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think he wants this. I think he wants the young players in.
I heard an interesting name thrown out there that if they wanted to go shopping, and I wouldn't agree with this, but somebody posted on Twitter, Jesse Puljujarvi.
No, 1,000 times no. He is this analytics darling that everybody got really high on during the Edmonton run a couple of years ago. But look at his ice time in Game 4 when they were down 3-0 to a progressive coach. Jay Woodcroft didn't play Jesse Puljujarvi. An analytics team like the Carolina Hurricanes barely played Jesse Puljujarvi. Sorry, no thank you.
If the Flames want to go out... Go ahead, Kev.
And the Jesse Puljujarvi dream experiment, stop it. Just stop. Sorry.
I predict Pelletier to be, as I said, a bottom 6 to start. If they want to go out and bring in a bottom 6 guy, I think I could see a justification for taking a flyer on Nolan Patrick. 24 years old. You could probably get him for less than $1 million. He's still 24. There might be something there. But again, I don't think you need to go outside.
I think his concussions. I don't know if he's going to play again.
That's why he hasn't. Yeah. But the whole, like, looking at this lineup, and I'm just with if Pelletier was healthy, I think there'd be a lot more. You'd have a lot better chance to have Coronado start in the AHL. I don't see it happening.
No.
As much as maybe potentially it might be the best for his development, I don't think it's happening.
And that's a good point. I think with Pelletier out, Coronado's almost guaranteed to take that spot.
Yeah. Because I just wrote out what it should look like, and even with Coronado up there, you still have one spot available that on another winger on that fourth line that needs to be filled. Let alone your 13th and 14th forwards.
Yep. And I honestly, Sean, don't see them carrying 14. I think with the farm team so close, you'll see them do what they did a lot last year, where you carry 13, you bring the 14th up by dragging the bag down the hallway when you need them.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, I also don't want to see a young guy be the 13th forward and not get the time to play. I think I could see Adam Ruzicka regressing to be the 13th forward at some point if someone takes that spot. But again, I think this might be an opportunity. And because we can't name a guy, I think this training camp is going to be a chance for somebody to step up. And I don't know who it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being one of the older guys like Pospisil, like Emilio Pettersson, somebody like that who's just maybe good enough to be your fourth line guy for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, nobody came into last year going, we got to get Walker Duehr up here, right? So I think maybe you try a guy like that and see what they got.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to the goaltending. And this kind of will blend in with other NHL here as well, as Andrei Vasilevsky has been injured. He's out he's out at least 8 weeks, which I thought a very touching and brave move by Calgary Flames fans, tweeting at the NHL Tampa Bay Lightning, a guy by the name of Dan Vladar is available. Would you like him? It's a very touching, noble moment by Flames fans, offering this guy that they don't think is better than Dustin Wolf to replace a guy that's one of the best goaltenders of this decade, of this era. I thought very touching. Good move, Flame fans. Won't happen.
Since apparently Tampa doesn't have any scouts, is there like a finder's fee if they trade for him because of your tweets, or how does this work?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But I think we were facing this conundrum anyway coming into this year because of where Dustin Wolf is at in his development. But I guess to me, this is where I am at. And I listen to Kevin Woodley when he talks about where we are at in goaltending. And I think one of my things right now is I really truly believe you should have 3 goaltenders in your system. 2 that can play in the NHL and 1 that is a hybrid between AHL and NHL.
So you're saying that's not Oscar Dansk?
And it's not, unfortunately, not yet Oscar Dansk. And look, you've got a almost mid-30s Jacob Markstrom as your number 1 goaltender who has an injury history. I am not sure I am ready to trade Dan Vladar yet. I get why people want to trade Dan Vladar, but I am not sure.
If not now, when?
Later in the year.
When goaltenders have less value?
Yes and no, Sean. I think there's always a team that loses their goalie before Christmas, and often that team will go out and make a rash trade. I'm not saying they should, but you often see that happen.
Maybe, but I don't see it be the value of goaltenders diminishes the later you get in the season because it takes longer for them to get because it takes a while for them to get used to the new system, the new vernacular that the defensemen use for communication. So the longer road you have throughout the season for that goaltender to get used to it and get into it, the better. So I think it's just that's why I said if you're not comfortable trading him now, when? Because I guess my question the longer you wait, the less value you potentially are going to get for him.
Do we know what he is? He's played 55 NHL games. Like, are we going to trade this guy and regret it later because we think that Wolf is the be all end all? Like, to me, Dan Vladar was the only Flame that looked good at some points last season. I'm not ready to move on from him yet. And I think with Wolf still waiver exempt, I think you run 3 goalies this year. I think you start with Wolf in the AHL, you start with Vladar here, and you see what Vladar can do for another year.
What more does Dustin Wolf need to do to prove that he's an NHL goalie?
I don't know that he needs to prove anything, but I think sometimes you've got to wait your turn.
And here's the other thing.
And I also don't think Tampa Bay is going to give Calgary a lot of assets for a goaltender who's played 55 games.
I don't think unless Vladar turns out to be the next like Mika Kiprasov, that is the second or third goaltender that you can get, and you're not goaltenders don't necessarily have the best value anyways. No matter what it is, it's going to be a mid-round pick.
And even then, I don't know that they want him. Like, I think they're in a win now position where they need to find an experienced goaltender.
Yeah.
He has more experience than all 3 of their goaltenders that they currently have combined.
For sure, but I think they would rather go out and get experience. I could see Colorado being a landing spot for him. I'm not sure they're comfortable with their goaltending.
For comparable,
so many years, so many times. Georgiev was so underrated last year with what he did with Colorado, and they've got Pavel Francouz on backing him up.
I think he's injured.
I don't. Francouz is injured right now.
Okay, so then maybe that would be a good line, good spot for.
And I mean, the thing is, we've still got Wolf for 1 more year at $800,000. He's an RFA after this, so technically the Flames control his rights after this. Like, I think you could sell Dustin Wolf on start in the AHL. This might sound silly too, but yes, Dustin Wolf's proven a lot, but can he do it without that coach? He's had the same coach for 2 years in the AHL. How much was Love part of his success? And I think it'd be an interesting experiment to start him down there with Trent Cull and see if we get the same success.
If I'm Dustin Wolf and you're telling me that, I'm not sure I'm happy.
No, but at the same time, I mean, business-wise, what are you going to do about it? You're under contract for a year, and then you're an RFA.
You say, I want to trade.
You could. I don't know he would do that. And, again, I would rather see a young goalie play than watch Markstrom play. I think they will make opportunities for Wolf to play this year. I just don't know that you move Vladar yet.
And also with Dustin Wolf, learning at the NHL level, being paid at the NHL rate too, because on an ELC he's not. It's not a two-way deal. He's not being paid $850,000 a year when he's playing down there. It's significantly less.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is it out of the realm of possibility that Jacob Markstrom gets traded at some point this year?
Yes.
I think if the Flames are not in a playoff spot, there's a lot of guys that could get traded. I mean, we talked about Lindholm. We talked about, some of these guys. I think if they're out of the playoffs by the new year, anyone who's not bolted down could get traded.
He's got a full no movement clause. That's bolted down.
I think if they're going to trade him, they're going to have to eat half that deal.
That's the other thing, and I think that if there's a trade to be made for Markstrom, it's an off-season one.
Yeah, I think that's more likely. And honestly, I could see the Flames keeping Wolf in the AHL. I could see them saying, you know what, you're not getting paid like that now. Give us 1 year to see what we got in Vladar and in you, and we'll pay you next year and bring you up if you can keep doing it.
And also throw how Vladar feels about this too, because now there's rumors about him being traded because Wolf's the heir apparent, and you've got Markstrom signed long term here with a no movement clause.
But I think those rumors follow you when you're a backup. There's a number of teams that have similar rumors because they've got a hot, AHLer.
I just think that there's enough here that there's too many balls to be juggled here that by the end of the year I do think we will see one goalie go. It's most likely going to be Vladar.
I think by the end of the year for sure, but I think on opening day we'll see Markstrom Vladar as the pair.
Yeah.
I think that's probably most likely, but I think you still need to look at every opportunity that is out there, and this Lightning with Vasilevsky out, the big hurdle there is the cap, because Tampa is right up against it. They're going to have to use their Tampa Bay Lightning legend Brent Seabrook on LTIR to create more room.
Do you remember those moments that Brent Seabrook had with the Tampa Bay Lightning? This was amazing.
But it's just, we got into this in our group chat, and I'm just saying you have to take this opportunity and at least explore it. And it's if you're gonna, I think Oscar Dance is a good enough goalie to be that hybrid, to be the starter in with the Wranglers, to be your third goalie there. I think he's good enough. He's not going to be your backup, and once you make this trade, you have to start looking and start developing other goaltenders that can supplant him as quickly as possible. But as a short-term option for your third goalie, he is fine.
And I think we've seen the Flames give Wolf starts, and I wouldn't be surprised if Wolf starts again tomorrow night in the Battle of Alberta preseason. But I think they really need to see this preseason if Dustin Wolf can do this at the NHL level. I mean, let's be honest. Dustin Wolf looks great, but how many times has there been an AHL goalie who looked great that didn't translate to the NHL? And I'm not saying that'll be Dustin Wolf, but it's the story as old as time.
Yeah,
the thing with the Dustin Wolf though that sets him apart for that, sorry, Kev, is that his performance since turning pro and in the AHL has been like, I don't think there's a comparable for his age and what he's done in the AHL.
No, I totally agree with you on that, but I'm just saying he might not be this, wow, we bring him in and then we can, move. I think what a lot of fans think is he becomes the backup this year and then they move on from Markstrom next year. And then he's, the next coming of Kiprusoff. Like, I think, anytime you have a young goalies take a while to develop. This has to be a measured approach.
It does have to be a measured approach. And I think they have taken a measured approach. They haven't rushed him in his first 2 years while he's been the best goalie in the AHL for basically 2 seasons. And but now again, they've got themselves in a position where they can deal from a position of strength. They've got an opportunity here with the Lightning, who need a short-term goal, a short-term solution with Vasilevsky out, and probably an upgrade on in their with their backup, because the best who they've got is Jonas Johansson, who has less than 40 games of experience, less than Vladar, and he's done it over like 4 or 5 seasons, so he hasn't it's been very, very spot duty. So
yeah,
at least you know with Vladar, he has been able to play more games in the season.
And Kev, you're going back to, would the Flames move on from Markstrom? I think if they are going to bring Wolf up, I don't think they can, because so now you run into trouble. Do you trust Wolf and Vladar as your pair? I think if you're going to go with the young guy, you need that grizzled veteran. I mean, it's like the year they brought Cujo in to back up Kipper, right? I think at some point you kind of need the veteran guy who can be old, reliable when you need them. And I think that Wolf Vladar is not the way to go there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other question is going to have to, that, is interesting, is how many games does Markstrom end up playing is the other question, because I think there's been talk about volume. There was talk about, his season. I don't think he was horrendous in the second half of the year, but he wasn't spectacular throughout the year. I think that is very fair to say. I think
that's where Wolf could see some time. I think you might see on a road trip that they bring 3 goalies with them, and Wolf gets, a game on a back-to-back or something if Markstrom's not looking good. And I think that might help push Markstrom too, to say, hey, this kid's going to take a job.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. I could see that. I think it's a very fascinating situation.
And if nothing else, hopefully it'll also push Vladar to, no crap, I might lose my job to the kid.
Yeah. And, listen, I think I want Wolf to push Vladar as much as possible. I want there to be a very intense goaltender competition. And, if we are in a position that we feel, okay, Wolf is 1,000% ready, then, and the right trade comes along for Vladar, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not sure I'm in a position right now with the Flames. Okay, let's get a draft pick for Vladar. I don't know if that's the right value.
And you can't flip this whole tandem in a year. I mean, I've heard some people say, trade Markstrom, trade Vladar, bring up Wolf, bring up, Dansker over. Like, you can't just flip both these goalies in the same year. You can probably move one of them and not the other.
Yeah.
It's not
again,
like
Markstrom's got a full no move clause.
Yep.
So he controls it, and if he's traded, it's going to be on his terms.
For sure.
Which really, really negates any negotiating power that the Flames have.
For sure.
Yeah. Before we get to our new end of the podcast, we'll get to that. But I just wanted to have a little quick chat about the new color commentator with the Flames. Megan Mickelson is the new commentator, and I have enjoyed her. I've enjoyed her perspective. She's a bit nerdy in terms of some of the things that she likes, which is great. I enjoy that. And I'm just it just feels like a really good fit. So her and Derek Wills on the radio commentary, I just want to say a huge shout out to what she's done. I don't this is her first color commentary gig. I know that she was contributing to Flames intermissions, but she's really seems detailed and prepared. And I think it's been a great replacement for Lou.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think Lou had a very specific style, and I think Lou's style worked better with other play-by-play guys. I think he worked well with Peter Maher and stuff. I think that him and Wills were in some ways too similar in style that it didn't work as well. So I like the contrast. I like getting more women into the sport when we can. Yeah. And I've had some issues in the past with some women. I mean, I'll be honest. I think Cassie's very knowledgeable, but I think when she started, she needed some more work on calling the game and the cadence and that sort of thing. And I think Megan already has that down. And that's what I like. You probably wouldn't know she's new to calling it just by listening to her. I think her and Derek need to build some chemistry, but I think it's going to be a really awesome group there to listen to.
Yeah. I can't add to this. I haven't listened to any of the games.
I was honestly, though, surprised, Kev. I kind of thought, again, like we're talking about next up with the players, I kind of thought Steinberg would be next up for that position. So I wonder.
I don't see him as a color commentator, though. And I mean, that was my thing.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Or that they'd bring up, what was her name? The lady who was doing the Wranglers, if they want a female there.
Casino?
But yeah.
Sandra Casino?
So, but I like it. I think she's good. I think, like you said, she's a little nerdy, but I think that's also what people want today. They want more the stats and the nerdy stuff and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the technicality.
And it's also a different role. Like Sandra Pacina, and I've listened to her.
She's got to do both color and play-by-play.
Yeah. I think it's bringing in someone like Megan Mickelson with her expertise. It may not be NHL, but it's still hockey. And it's still, you can still do X's and O's, and you can still talk about all, again, as Kev calls it, the nerdy stuff. But it's still good. Yeah.
And I think that color job needs to be someone who's played. Like Lou never played. And Lou even said he was a better play-by-play guy because of that. And I like you said, Sean, that she's played, but not at the NHL level. So she's got a high level of hockey knowledge, but she's not kind of the NHL level. I think it's a good pair.
Yeah, I do like the color commentators when they have played, because I do think they bring a little bit of that knowledge. Yeah. But some of my favorite, like even John Garrett at the end, it's like he played goaltender in the.
I don't think you have to play the NHL, but you have to play it somehow. It's like coaches. You don't have to been in the NHL, but you got to played college or WHL or CHL or something.
Yeah, but it's just like it's finding that right balance of having that knowledge and as well as entertaining, right? Because
for sure.
At the end, as much as it's competition sports, the production of it is entertainment.
Yeah, and we've seen the NHL becoming more diverse. I mean, we have Harayan Singh doing commentary. Now we have Megan. Like, I like to see this, not just a bunch of old white guys anymore. So I was really happy when I tuned into the first preseason game, and they didn't make a big deal of who it was going to be. I didn't see any grand announcements or anything. So I thought it was kind of a nice low-key transition there. And I'm excited to see how her and Derek do.
Yeah. The Canucks have Randeep Janda on their radio color comment. And I'm not sure I don't think he really played much hockey, but he's been quite good at that. And then, it's.
And I think
getting more diverse and welcoming and making it so that there's no the barrier to entry to enjoying listening or watching the game. I was going to say that I think Megan is the everyman, if you will, or the every woman. We can relate to her. I think it was hard for a lot of people to relate to Lou when he spent all his free time going to amateur games and living hockey. And I mean, it's cool, but I think a lot of people couldn't relate to that. And when I listen to Megan, I'm like, wow, she's the every person. We can relate to her. She's that, fans' eyes on the rink.
But Lou's knowledge of hockey is
for sure. And I think there's a place for that. But I think in some cases he was giving way too esoteric stories about guys that were not relevant in the moment.
I enjoyed his stuff.
And there's a place for it for sure.
Yeah. And you need that, but you also need I put ketchup on this in the middle of the play, like John Garrett did. And
I find with the new radio team, we've got the play-by-play guy who's calling down the middle, and she's actually getting excited. Like you can tell, even when they're talking about like the outdoor game, she's getting excited. Like she's that fan's voice.
Oh, those jerseys, Dan, those jerseys. Oh my gosh, those jerseys. Oh, sorry to go down this rabbit hole.
They're better than the last ones.
They're better than the Oilers.
They're better than the Ronald McDonald ones, and they're better than the Oilers.
No, the Oiler ones are specific. The Flames ones are the Flames ones are better than the Oiler ones, but the Oiler ones, oh.
I mean, the Oiler one is fine, other than just like this the logo. I just don't. I'm not a jersey guy, and if you like it, go for it, go buy it, whatever. The more I look at the Oilers one, like that, the logo,
it looks like clip art.
With like the scroll underneath, just doesn't quite mesh for me.
See, and I think we've seen the NHL this fascination with retro and changing things. And it's like the Oilers and the Flames are wearing their retro jerseys. Now they're just kind of making up old stuff to make it look retro. And we've seen other leagues like the NBA who've more looked to the future. And I think the NHL needs to get away from this notion of retro and maybe start just looking at alternate color sources or the future. We had a guy on our Facebook page, Andrew Jepson, who I think said it well. If you want to go retro, lean all the way in, put a black and white filter on the outdoor game. Like, use the old timey voices. Like, if we want to go old timey, let's go all the way. Let's make this a grainy picture. Let's do all that. But the NHL I feel like we've been doing the retro thing for way too long. Remember when the Flames had the laces on their jersey and they weren't even around in the day of the laces? Like, let's move on from the retro.
Yeah.
If they want to do something like I'll put this will go into one of my hills I'll die on, and that's the white jerseys need to get out of hockey in the NHL, because it just white jersey on white ice just doesn't work as well as some of the other colors. Like, if you want it, what they could have done is you have the Oilers in their royal blue 80s ones, have the Flames in yellow jerseys.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that they're wearing these not just for the outdoor game, but I'm told they're wearing them for every Battle of Alberta. I mean, you could this is where you could add a third jersey. Like, I think the Flames could have worn black, or like you said, yellow, or something different. But, I would be fine. I've never been a fan of the reverse retro, but if they would have used last year's reverse retro for the outdoor game, I think that would have been awesome. Like, save that jersey for this year and go that way. And I think in the outdoor games, why do we need white? Why not just do red on blue?
Thank you. Like, one of the best ones we saw was at the Big House. Yeah. When the Red Wings and Leafs played, and it was blue versus red. It looked beautiful.
I just think that these jerseys look very uninspired. If I asked my 5-year-old nephew to draw me a generic hockey jersey, I think this is what it would have looked like. And while the Flames say, "Oh, we're honoring the Stampeders," I question how many people A, know there was a hockey team named the Stampeders, and B, care to honor them. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful, but like, let's maybe honor something from our own history. Can we do a jersey that somehow commemorates their 89 Cup run, or can we commemorate something else about the city? Remember when they did the Calgary script? I hated that, but I'd rather see that than this.
It looked like a Walmart jersey.
I liked Noah Adler's tweet where he said, "I'll give Noah the props on this one. The 2004 Flames jersey versus the 2006 Oilers jersey would have been great."
Yeah, and I think doing something like that, or even bringing back the pedestal for one game or something like that. Like, I think there's so many ways to do it. I think the one this year is better than the last outdoor one. That was terrible.
Yeah.
But I think that we're sort of, and again, if they want to do something zany, look to the future. Like, why don't we need to do old ones? Why don't we do metallic looking future jerseys now that we can get silver and gold
dark
helmets?
Ones, like the Dallas Stars.
There you go. Or like the Stars' old uterus jersey, or do something different. Like, remember the Burger King jersey? Like, just do something completely zany and out there, not having to go with retro inspired.
Yeah. You can do what baseball's doing a really good job with their jerseys. Kind of, I like what they're doing. I think that, and even the NFL is doing a great job with the jerseys. The NHL is behind on this one.
Yeah, sure. And again, I think the NHL keeps dipping into the past as opposed to trying to go to the future. And the one time they did that, it was their first third jersey program. I mean, the Canucks had a gradient jersey. It was terrible, but it was something different. I mean, you remember this Kings jersey? Again, it was terrible, but it was something different. Like, let's just try something different.
Which jersey?
Not have to go retro. Yeah. And they always want this outdoor game to be retro. It's like, it's not as though people don't play hockey outside anymore.
Yeah.
It's not like this is a thing of the past.
Yeah. All right. We've started something new. It was the brilliant question by Chris last week that I thought Craze did a great discussion. So I'm going to keep it in. One last question, and it's not a question from me. It's a question from one of Sean or Dan. What they will pop up, I have no idea what it is, and we'll kind of dig for that. As Sean, are you still there?
I'm here.
Yes, you are. Sean?
Sean's present and accounted for.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, his computer went kaput.
It looks okay for me.
Looks for me, yeah.
It looked like you were going in and out there for a second. Anyway, not for okay.
He was just the veins were going back to normal after talking about jerseys.
Yeah.
Get rid of white jerseys, please.
And get rid of Blasty.
Oof.
Anyway. All right. What's the question?
I put one in here. I don't know if you guys want me to go with that, but
go for it.
Will Oliver Shillington be back? And if so, what is he? I mean, and I'll give you the premise for this. I think when Shillington was coming up, there was years that on our podcast, we said, this guy should not be in the NHL. This guy should never be a Flame again. If you remember the bubble season, he looked terrible. Then he had one good year. He got paid. He didn't play last year. Like, is this guy the Oliver Shillington we saw the last year he played? Or was that the kind of the anomaly year? What is this guy if he's even going to be around this year?
I don't think that I can speculate on the future of Oliver Shillington because I don't really know all of the situation behind it. I hope he's okay. I hope whatever happens to Oliver Shillington, that his life gets right. I know that there was an interview with Eric Frantz where he talked a little bit about the issues that he has been struggling with.
So maybe let's put it differently then, Kevin. So we're not speculating. If Oliver doesn't play by, let's say, January, is there still a spot for him in the NHL? Like, is this guy good enough that you'll wait for him?
Well, I think the other question that I would ask back is whatever the replacement of Oliver Shillington is good enough to make Shillington have to fight for a position. Like, is it whether that be Jordan Oesterle, Dennis Gilbert?
Honestly, I think the Flames probably went into the season with him penciled on the second pair with Uyghur. And I think Zadorov last year made enough gains that Shillington would have to fight Zadorov for that second pair.
Yeah, I guess my thing is Oesterle, whether it be Gilbert, even some are talking about Solinov as a potential 6-7 guy in the future.
Sure, in the future, but Shillington's got a year left. Like, let's not look past this year. But honestly, I think if he's not here this year, I don't think you can pencil him in the future. I think his NHL career, not saying he can't play pro hockey, but maybe he goes to Sweden and plays there or something like that. But this is a bubble guy who, to me, had one good season. And I don't want to downplay whatever he's going through, but I don't think this is the kind of guy you wait for as an organization. You've got to move on from him if he can't do it.
I think that you got to give him the best care possible, whatever that is.
Yeah,
I think that's the priority. To be honest with you, I think right now I don't have him penciled in for the year. I'm not counting on him.
And I think bringing in an older guy like Oesterle, I think was probably maybe an insurance policy in that way.
Yeah, I'm kind of just on the side of that 6-7 pair guy. I'm more and more getting comfortable to what Dennis Gilbert is. I think he's a guy that can play a 6-7 role, and I wouldn't be upset about that. He brings a bit of nastiness to his game, which is good in that role. In that
something I really haven't seen since Derek England.
Yeah, it works. I don't know. My other side of that though is I'm not sure I'm a big fan of Nikita Zadorov in the top 4. That's my dilemma.
I'm not either, but I think based on what you've got, I'd rather have him in the top 4 than Gilbert or Oesterle.
Yeah, he's better than those, but and
I think Zadorov is a good contrast to Uyghur. Like, I think you could see a really interesting, almost like when we saw Regier and Phaneuf. I think you kind of get that, two very different defenseman styles.
Yeah.
But I guess, when I'm thinking about this, I think that
that's the issue with the Flames right now.
Yeah. And I don't see them going out and acquiring
somebody. You've got Zadorov playing in the top 4.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and honestly, though, Sean,
they don't have the assets to be able to go out.
No, and Zadorov's getting paid like he's in the top 4. I mean, he's getting paid almost double what Shillington is. So, if we're looking at it from a salary piece, he's probably the guy that they were expecting to be there, or Brad was.
Go ahead, Sean. Yeah, I look at that, and like I said, I think Zadorov on a sort of a competitor, like a cup contender, you're looking at him as like someone that you're on the third pair. He's like 5'6", and the Flames need him to be a 4 here, and I don't know if that's the best use there. And with Shillington, if he can come back, you can't. I don't think penciling him into the top 4 is good. Is fair to him either. He hasn't played an NHL game in over a season. By the time he comes back, it'll be over a season, and you have to be able to find a way to ease him back in. So
I think you got to start him at 7.
Zadorov there. Yeah, you're still going to have Zadorov in the top 4. So I think he had that one good season where he came in and became a good sort of puck mover, someone who you could pair with a Uyghur or a Tanev, and they could like focus more on the defensive side.
Mm-hmm.
But now you just look at it and you that's the problem. You don't know what you got.
He's almost the defenseman version of Dylan Dubé, like we talked about earlier. He's that guy that could do good, has done good, has some flash of brilliance, but in the end is probably expendable.
Yeah. What was I going to say?
And you were talking about Gilbert, Kev. While you're thinking about that, I think you'll see Gilbert play a lot because, I mean, we know Tanev can't play 82 games. So I think Gilbert will probably slot into Tanev's spot when Tanev's hurt.
Yeah. I hope Tanev doesn't get hurt.
Well, and that's one of the biggest issues with the Flames going into this season is that defensive depth. And if you do, whether there's a Hanifin trade or there is injuries.
And that's the big reason I don't think Hanifin gets traded, because then you're even more screwed with depth.
I was going to say, some people may laugh, but I still think the Flames miss Eric Gudbranson. A lot of what he brought, and especially on that right third pair, I think he was just the perfect guy for that. You could not pay him. You are not like, you can't pay him.
They had to walk away from him.
You have to, but yeah, they sure missed that for sure.
For sure.
Well, I think it's in a different way. Zadorov on the third pair would be ideal the way Gudbranson on the third pair was.
Yeah. And I honestly think this is probably Tanev's last year. Like, he's getting hurt so much. I don't think anyone's going to probably bring him in next year. So I think you milk him for what you got this year and his contract's over and you move on. But I think this is a year for Schilling to prove what he's got. I just don't know that he's got much more in the tank from what we've seen.
Yeah. And kudos to Nikita Zadorov, by the way, for taking that risk and taking that stand against Russia. I do think that is admirable, and I totally respect him for that. So
does it change the way you guys look at him at all, for better or for worse?
I've always loved the Zadorov interview. I think he's always been a great interview. It's the question is he's the Flames chaos draft. He's the Flames Tyler Myers. You don't know what you can get with him.
And I think we've seen his game mature as a Flame. I think, again, like Sean, like you're saying, they need him to be the number 4. And I think they put him in that role last year in some cases. And in some cases we saw him rise to the occasion. In some cases we didn't. But I think this is a guy who there's still some development there, even at his age, to potentially mold him into more than he is.
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan's been chatting. What is it? What is this here? I hate the idea that a guy needs to play high in the lineup just because he's getting paid more than others. I'm more than content with Myers being on a bottom pair guy for Van. Yeah. I mean,
I don't disagree to some extent.
I don't think anybody's talking about, like, I don't think we're going by pay lines. I think it's about chemistry and fit. Right. But I think at some point it does come down to, hey, we're paying this guy enough. We got to see a return out of them. And if we're not playing them enough, we're not going to see that return. I think it also depends on where your team is. I think Calgary and Vancouver are a very different place in their development. And if I'm trying to ice a younger team, I have no problem putting older, higher paid guys in supporting roles, because that means that my young guys are taking those top spots. Yeah. All right. I think we've covered pretty much everything we need to at this point. Anything else?
Yep.
No. And that's about it for this week. Just enjoying the Battle of Alberta and seeing what happens in the week to come.
Yes. So Flames, Oilers, Canucks are playing Seattle tonight, and then they are playing. I think they're playing the Oilers this weekend as well.
So you guys are Canucks fans. You can tell me this: are the Canucks and Kraken, are they actually developing a rivalry, or do people just want to shove them in one because of their geolocations?
They're just shoving. They just want to shove them together because of their location. Yeah. Hasn't developed into anything more than similar to, like,
New Jersey, Philly, or
Yeah, until there's some bad blood. I think Seattle has a little of bad blood, but Vancouver not really at this point. But I think
reminds you that kid on the playground where
at the same time
he pokes you and you don't poke him back, right? It's
yeah. There's no real rivalry yet.
The NHL loves the
rivalries
regional
are built on the ice in playoffs for the most part. On the ice when there's something heated.
So Vancouver's got to make the playoffs for there to be a rivalry. Okay.
Well, that's true though, right? Like,
well, they got to play each other in the playoffs.
Well, and I think either playoffs or there has to be big moments. Like I think a lot of Flames fans started to hate the Canucks after that big line brawl years ago. Like there's got to be big moments as just playing standard games together.
Yeah, man. Or the one team gets really good and the other team just gets like the other team and fan base just get a little jealous because that happens too, right?
For sure.
Okay. All right, let's leave it there. Dan, what's your schedule like? What are you doing?
Fireside Chat is back. We record every Sunday. You can find us wherever you find podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you find us. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Mastodon, we're on Blue Sky. Anywhere that there's hockey talk happening online, we're probably there. It's hard work, but we're making sure that we're there. So find us if you want. We talk every week. We record on Sunday, put our new show on Monday, recapping everything in the Flames world for the last week.
And Sean, what's going on Monday? Is it Monday?
Yeah, on Monday I'll be hosting the Canucks Talk podcast for here. So we got Luongo, not jersey retirement, the Ring of Honor to discuss, as well as we got to go over 10-0 loss. We've got
we're going to be on the opposite side of that card.
Yeah, last night's game against the Oilers, as well as anything that comes up tonight, as well as the game on Saturday against the Oilers as well. So yeah, it'll be good.
And how do we follow you?
I am Bearded Canuck 03 on Twitter and Blue Sky, and I think that's it. Yeah.
Tyler TNOBLE on all social medias, Snides on all social medias. Devin changed his name to Shifts and Fucks on Twitter.
I'm surprised that Master Elon is allowing that.
Devin don't care about no Master Elon, and that's why we love him for it. And we are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We'll try to get on we got to get on all the other social media accounts, but like us, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, all of those things. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening. We will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.